All right, welcome. Today we are diving into a really big question, one that gets to the heart of leadership. Why is it that some people can inspire just incredible loyalty and action, while others just can't? Well, according to Simon Sinek, the answer boils down to one simple but honestly revolutionary idea. So let's get into it. Really think about it for a second. Why do some leaders, some organizations command that kind of fierce loyalty? It's obviously not just about the paycheck or who has the fancy title. So, what is it? What makes us, as human beings, choose to follow anyone, especially when the going gets tough? And here's the answer. And it's so simple, it's almost deceptive. We don't really follow the what. The product, the job description. We follow the why, the belief behind it all. And that's a total game changer, right? We're drawn to a shared purpose, not just a list of instructions. Okay, so this whole powerful idea is captured in a really elegant model he calls the golden circle. And once you understand how this works, it kind of changes how you see everything. So here's the deal. Imagine three concentric circles. On the outside, you've got what. In the middle, how. And right at the core, why. Now, most people, most companies, they communicate from the outside in. They start by telling you what they do. We sell computers. Then maybe they'll tell you how they do it. They're beautifully designed. But the leaders who truly inspire, they do the exact opposite. They start from the inside out. They start with their purpose, their why. The marketing guru Seth Godin really hits the nail on the head with this. He says, a what gives information, a why gives identity. And that's it, isn't it? It makes a decision personal. It's not just a transaction anymore. When you connect with a why, it becomes part of your story, part of who you are. But, and this is a huge but, a real why is not some slick marketing slogan they cooked up in a boardroom. It's not designed to make everybody happy. A real why actually costs you something. It demands sacrifice. It's not invented for a new campaign. It's uncovered by looking at how you actually behave, especially when the pressure is on. So you might be thinking, okay, that's a nice idea. But here's where it gets really fascinating. This isn't just a clever sales pitch. The power of starting with why is literally hardwired into our biology. It taps into the very structure of our brains, the part that builds trust and drives our decisions. Think about this. Nobel Prize winner Daniel Kahneman proved that we're not the rational creatures we like to believe we are. He said, feelings and intuitions lead. Reasoning follows to justify. Basically, our gut makes the decision first. Our logical, rational brain just scrambles to come up with a good story to explain the choice we've already made. And that's why starting with why is so powerful. It speaks directly to the part of the brain that's actually calling the shots. And this is why consistency is absolutely everything. Simon Sinek puts it bluntly. Trust is destroyed fastest by hypocrisy, when leaders say why, but act like what. We feel that gap instantly, that disconnect between their words and their actions, and poof, the trust is gone. And it's not just a feeling in your head. The neuroscientist Antonio Damasio takes it a step further. He says trust is not only belief, it is felt safety. It's a physical state. When you trust someone, your body is literally calmer, less on edge. So when that trust is betrayed, it doesn't just feel like a broken promise. It feels like a physical threat. And finally, the incredible researcher Brené Brown gives us the last piece of this puzzle. She says trust is destroyed by secrecy, blame, and betrayal, and by leaders who demand vulnerability from everyone else but refuse to show it themselves. That one-way street, that hypocrisy, it absolutely demolishes the safety that trust needs to survive. Okay, so we get it. We need a clear why, and we understand the biology of trust. But how do you actually make it real? How does a leader take this powerful idea and turn it into the living, breathing culture of a team or an organization? Well, it's definitely not about putting a fancy poster on the wall. Culture is like a plant. It's what you consistently water every single day. It's built from the ground up by who you hire, what you celebrate, the daily actions you prioritize, and who you promote. A why only becomes a real culture when all those systems reinforce it, and when people feel psychologically safe enough to actually live by it without being afraid. And that brings us to what might be the single greatest test of a leader's commitment to their why.
This is the moment of truth. What do you do when your absolute top performer, the person who brings in all the results, is also the person who undermines the culture every single day? And the choice couldn't be more stark. On one hand, you keep the performer. You get the short-term results, sure, but the foundation of trust across the entire team starts to crack. On the other hand, you protect the culture. Yeah, you might lose a star, and that hurts. But the whole system gets stronger because everyone, and I mean everyone, sees that your values, your why, are not for sale.
Now, we have to talk about the dark side of this, because a powerful why is a tool. And like any tool, it can be used to build or it can be used to break. It can inspire, but it can also be twisted to manipulate and control. So, how do we know when we've crossed that line? Thankfully, the cult expert Rick Allen Ross gives us a pretty clear set of red flags to watch out for. First, isolation. Do they cut you off from outside opinions? Second, information control. Do they limit what you're allowed to see or read? Third, shaming doubt. Is asking a question treated like an act of betrayal? And finally, claiming exclusive truth. Is the group presented as the only way? If you're ticking these boxes, you're not in a place of inspiration anymore. You're in dangerous territory. And this is why it's not about being smart or dumb. The philosopher Hannah Arendt made this terrifyingly clear. She said, danger begins when people stop thinking. The scariest systems are the ones that make normal people feel relieved to just obey. Manipulation doesn't prey on a lack of intelligence, it preys on our very human need for certainty and belonging. All right, let's bring this all home and talk about the ultimate proof of a real why. It's not about how it performs when everything's going great. It's about how it holds up when things get tough, when people are exhausted, burned out, and just plain cynical. Because in those moments when people are skeptical and worn down, they don't need another motivational slogan. They need to feel seen. They need to feel cared for. A purpose that isn't backed by genuine empathy for the people trying to achieve it, well, that's not inspiration. That's just exploitation. So how do you earn back trust when it's been broken? Nelson Mandela showed us exactly how. You don't do it by making excuses or defending your reputation. You rebuild belief by returning to your core principles and proving them through your actions, especially when it's hard and costs you something. And that really brings us to the core of it all. A real why isn't something that's shouted from the rooftops. That's just noise. A real why indoors. It's quiet. It proves its strength not by being the loudest voice in the room, but by its ability to weather any storm, year after year. So, after all of this, we have to turn the question back to you. What is the why that truly guides your actions? Not when it's easy, but when it's hard. Because that right there is the starting point for everything else.